Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Reviews. Today I'll be talking about Hand of Fate 2 on the Nintendo Switch. I'll start by saying that I spent over 75 hours to get to the end of this game, and I'm not mad about that, which is in itself a fairly strong compliment coming from me because, as you may know, with a few exceptions, I tend to prefer a more concise gaming experience. Well, Hand of Fate 2 is one of those exceptions. Is it as grand, epic, and polished as something like The Witcher 3? Absolutely not. Hand of Fate 2 has a flavor all its own, and that flavor will not be for everyone. This is absolutely a flawed gem, but it's a little gem nonetheless, at least in my opinion. Hand of Fate 2 is an unusual game, and therefore it may be somewhat unwieldy or cumbersome to try and explain, which might make this, I'm guessing, probably a pretty long episode. And it is similar in that way, and not only in that way, but primarily in that way to Loop Hero. But hang in there, because this one might be worth your time, depending on your taste in games. The visuals and audio create a presentation that is vaguely reminiscent of the dark whimsy found in the work of Tim Burton, or the Fable series of games. Although Hand of Fate 2 is less polished, than something like Fable, as on the Switch, at least, it does experience some polygon clipping, some slowdown at times, and like these weird jittery animation loops. You'll probably all have some examples here in the footage that you can see. Particularly, you're going to run into those during enemy death animations at the end of a battle sequence. For some reason, those enemy models just kind of spaz out or twitch out sometimes in the closing animations of a battle sequence. However, I was able to look past these relatively minor annoyances for what is otherwise an unusual and enjoyable gaming experience. Or at least I thought so. Obviously, by the title, this game is a sequel. So, probably wondering, is it necessary to play the first game? Well, I can tell you that I have not played the first game, and I had a good time with this one. And according to the majority of sources on the internet, that's pretty much par for the course. Most people say that it's not really necessary to play the first game. Even the premise of Hand of Fate 2 is a bit unusual. Basically, you're an adventurer who has made his way across the land to meet with a wizard who once controlled the world, or more specifically, the game of life and death, as he calls it. This is how the game begins. You're sitting in front of this wizard at a table, and he essentially serves as your D&D dungeon master of sorts. And what he does is he makes you relive your past adventures so that you can become strong enough and skilled enough to help him defeat the usurper of his former throne. So in other words, he was dethroned, he's trying to get his throne back, and he's using you to do it. That's the premise of the game. The levels are themed after tarot cards, and as you complete some of the levels, more will unlock for you to choose from. So the game flow goes something like this. You choose a level to play, then you choose the cards in your deck for that level. And don't worry, I'm not a big card-based RPG fan. This in fact, might be my favorite card-based RPG or deck-based RPG since Lost Kingdoms on the GameCube. Although that is a very different game. Like, these two games are not similar really at all, except for the fact that they both feature cards in them. Anyways, you select your cards, and the cards basically represent, weapons, armor, items, spells, and locations, etc., that you may encounter on your play through the level. Then each level begins with a narrative which explains basically what's going on in that particular scenario and what your goal is. So at times it actually feels a little bit like a text adventure, but with visuals. So I guess a visual novel in a sense, but that doesn't feel right either. Anyways, after it gets the narrative out of the way, and the game is text heavy, by the way. It's fairly text heavy, and those text segments are often not voiced. So I know that's for some strange reason that's an obstacle for some people today. So just be aware of that. And then you navigate what basically amounts to a game board. Except for there's not a board. The quote-unquote board is composed entirely of cards, and each card or space on the board is a different encounter. Some of those encounters may be combat, others may be a game of chance. There are a variety of different games of chance, and some cards may be narrative and offer a text-based decision type of situation, similar to what you might find in a BioWare game, but obviously I would say a bit stripped back from the complexity that some BioWare games can feature with their conversation trees, definitely. Anyways, so the battles, if and when you find yourself in one, they play out in these small sort of arena-like settings. There's not a lot of interaction. In fact, I think there's pretty much zero interaction with the background. It's pretty much you and the enemies, and the background is just there to look at, essentially. You have the usual assortment of attacks, parries, counters, dodge rolls, and you have special attacks that are specific to the weapon you have equipped. The combat isn't the most polished. I wouldn't quite expect Arkham Asylum here, but I nonetheless found it enjoyable and somewhat strategic. And until you get the hang of it, frankly, it can be challenging depending on the, kind of the cards or the equipment that you have at your disposal at the time. The games of chance, those segments include dice rolls, a variety of pick a card games, pick the right card, and this other thing where you have to stop a swinging pendulum at just the right moment. Now, you can find equipment that will give you a better chance at some of these mini games, and that can be extremely helpful because they really can be pretty important to your overall success. You can also gain NPC companions that can give you an edge, or some type of bonus depending on the companion in these games of chance or these mini games, and they also aid you in combat as well. Overall, though, I would say if you find random number generators to be a deal breaker, which I know some people do, especially when they can have a fairly significant impact on your success or failure, then this may not be the game for you. However, you can mitigate these games of chance, like I said, with not only equipment and the companions that you select, but also, player skill definitely plays some role in most of these games, the mini games. Also, many equipment and location cards have a token, and a token is basically like a mini quest or some condition, and if you meet that condition, you unlock the token at the end of the round, and that token represents, a new card, basically new equipment or new locations or whatever it happens to be. And listen, I apologize if all of this is a little hard to follow or put together into a cohesive mental image of what this game is. As I mentioned, it is a fairly unusual and somewhat cumbersome collection of systems to try to explain how they all sort of flow together, but they do work together pretty well, I would say. Anyways, just to give you an idea, these token quests might be something along the lines of use this sword's finishing move on 20 soldiers to earn the token, which means, unlock new cards or whatever. It's that sort of thing. Use the shield to block, fit, 20 arrows or something like that, and then you unlock a new card. Now, trying to unlock new items to give yourself an edge on a level that is giving you a hard time or can make the game a little bit grindy. But there are so many different elements to this game that, to be honest, I really didn't mind the grind. I don't know. I had a good time. With this game. And chances are you probably will be doing some grinding because this game is not easy. In fact, with the random number generator elements, there were a few times when I wondered if I would be finishing this game at all. But with perseverance, it is ultimately doable. So hang in there. I do need to address a couple more shortcomings before we wrap this one up. First, without any spoilers, I'm just going to say that the ending flat out sucks. This one is definitely about the journey and the sense of accomplishment, which is not insignificant here, by the way. The game is hard, but when you complete a level or, complete a quest, or, definitely when you finish the game, there is a pretty strong sense of accomplishment, or at least I felt that there was. Also, and this is a huge one, it's a very significant issue that I'm about to drop on you here. I did experience a few crashes, though they were infrequent, and I never lost very much, if any, real progress. So just understand that. I don't, as I've said many times before on this channel, I am a console gamer, and my expectation is that the game does not crash. The hardware should be up to the task. So, but if I'm okay with the crashes, which again, I want to emphasize are pretty infrequent, pretty rare. If I'm okay with them, then they're pretty mild, comparatively speaking. But they do exist, and I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Hand of Fate 2 kept me motivated with some roguelike elements. Even on a run through a level that you ultimately fail on, your progress towards unlocking tokens and thereby more cards is persistent. So even if you fail at a level, you still are working towards those token quests. So you almost always feel like you're progressing towards something in the grand scheme of things. Hand of Fate 2 retails on the eShop for $30, although it wouldn't be the worst way to spend $30, to be honest with you. That's not an outrageous price for this game. I would say maybe put it on your wish list and wait for a sale. At the time that I'm writing this, which is February 7th, 2024, it's currently on sale for $7.50, which is 75% off. And in my estimation, it is definitely easily worth that price, or even at $22.50, which would just be 25% off. With warts and all, I would say this is a solid, if flawed, game, which I think was very much worth my time, and certainly worth little over $20. Although obviously your mileage may vary, different strokes for different folks. Please click like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you all next time, whenever that may be. Bye-bye.
Are the stakes life, death, and vengeance? We must ride, for time is short, and you have much to learn. Make your first choice, and let us set these wheels in motion once more.